Welcome to Face to Face. Our guest today is Alan Khazei. I hope I pronounced that
You
right,
did,
Alan.
absolutely. You got it perfectly. Thank you.
Excellent. And he is running for the 4th district of U.S. Congressional District in Massachusetts, which includes Brookline, and I'm going to ask him what are other towns into this one.
Sure.
And this is a very important seat in Massachusetts because right now it is held by Congressman Joe Kennedy. He is running for the Senate, so he's vacating this seat. And we have 9 candidates from the Democratic Party who are vying to be to replace him. And the primary elections are on September 1st. And Alan is the first candidate from this group of 9 who has really tried to reach out to Indian American community. So we're very excited. And Alan, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Pendra. It's delighted for me to be with you. Thank you.
Okay. The first time it's a really pleasure for me to meet with you today because I was very familiar with a group, the city you founded, and I didn't know you were the founder of that, and
Yes.
You were the CEO of this. And I learned about this through Ravi Sakoja, another Indian American leader here. And I have been ever since a big fan of City Year. And also you have been involved with AmeriCorps as well.
Yes.
So let's start with first thing. My first question to you is why politics and why U.S. Congress?
Sure. Well, it's great to be with you. And Ravi is a wonderful friend. He's actually on the board of City Year. We're very close. So thank you for having me. I am, we're living in an unprecedented time. We have the coronavirus health crisis, which has led to this economic crisis. And now we have this extraordinary racial justice awakening in response to the brutal killing of George Floyd. And while the Trump administration, I think, has been a disaster at dealing with these, the American people have been at our best. My mom was a nurse, my father was a doctor. Our healthcare workers who are still risking their lives to save other people's lives, our essential workers, and now this amazing protest energy that's happening. And I'm the son of immigrants. My father was a doctor from Iran. My mother's side of the family came from Italy. And my parents raised me, and they were a nurse and a doctor. They raised me with values of healing and fighting for our country. My dad came here, like many immigrants, inspired by the ideals of America, of liberty, democracy, and justice. So I got involved with City Year, but I feel like all these crises are opening us up to what I call a New Deal moment, where we actually, in order to confront the crisis, we need big, bold ideas. And that's the kind of work I've been doing my whole life. So I feel the chance to serve in Congress, which is a service job to help people directly with their lives, but also to put forward a bold agenda to meet these times, is an extraordinary opportunity.
So talking about agenda, if I ask you that, what will be your 3 top issues when you, if you go to U.S. Congress?
Sure. Well, first thing we have to do is deal with the coronavirus crisis. Unfortunately, the Trump administration, we have no national strategy. We should. We still aren't taking the virus seriously enough. We should have free testing. We need contact tracing. We need to jumpstart our economy. I put out a whole plan back on March 16th. And it seems like we're going to have a new administration. So my first focus would be, what do we do about this crisis? Both the health crisis, to make sure that we get a handle on it, and then the economic crisis. And I have a number of ideas around that. The second thing would be 1 million people in national service. As you mentioned, I founded an organization, City Year, to unite young adults, 18 to 24, from all different backgrounds to give a year of service. We were the model and inspiration for the AmeriCorps program that President Clinton started, which is like a domestic Peace Corps. That's now inspired by the work I did at City Year. 1.1 million people have served through AmeriCorps, fighting poverty, fixing schools, taking care of our environment, supporting seniors and veterans. I want to take that to 1 million a year, because we have millions of young people out of work right now, and we could also use them in a public health corps to do the daily contact tracing, in an education corps to educate our kids, in a new climate action corps. So that would be one of the first things I do. And I actually believe, because I helped to build the movement, I worked to pass 3 major pieces of federal legislation, working with President Clinton, Senator Kennedy, President Obama, but also Republicans like John McCain in a very bipartisan way. I will have a unique position if I'm in Congress to be able to do that. So that would be one of my top priorities.
Okay. Now, I know you are not new to the politics. You have very deep roots, with your engagement in the civic movements here in the United States. Tell us a little bit about some of the leaders you have worked with in the past.
Sure. Well, I've had the chance to work with 4 presidents. I've worked with George H.W. Bush, who appointed me to the first Commission on National and Community Service because of my leadership in founding City Year. That was back in 1990. I worked very closely with President Clinton to create the AmeriCorps program. We were the model. I worked very closely with Senator Kennedy for 20 years on 3 major pieces of legislation. I worked very closely with President Obama. In the first 100 days, we put forward something called the Serve America Act, which was to expand AmeriCorps dramatically, and we got that done with a huge bipartisan vote. I've also worked, I'm honored that in this campaign, I've been endorsed by General Stanley McChrystal, who I've worked with for 8 years, trying to make a year of service a rite of passage, with Ambassador and former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, who's endorsed me. Michelle Flournoy, who has the chance to be the first woman Secretary of Defense, has endorsed me. Senator Michael Bennet has endorsed me. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta is endorsing me. Congressman Jamie Raskin, Senator Gary Hart. I have a number of national leaders who I've worked with for years. Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, is also supporting me, which I'm very honored by. All of these tremendous people, role models for me as public servants that I've worked with. So it's I'm very honored.
So now you have 9 candidates running for the primary, and we did our homework, and you are in the top 3, I think, are in opinion polls. So it's going to be a tight race, but good news is that you are in the top 3. What Indian Americans and anybody else who is interested in helping you can do?
Well, thank you. And we have a baseball team running for Congress here. This is a historic seat, and with Joe Kennedy, before that Barty Frank. And so, we have a lot of people, but I am in the top tier, as you said. And I would love to have support from the Indian American community. I spent 5 glorious weeks in India in 1996, starting in Calcutta, traveling all the way to Delhi, going all the way through Rajasthan, finishing up in Mumbai, meeting with social entrepreneurs and change agents, and really learning from the robust democracy that is India. The organization I started after City Year, I named it Be the Change, inspired by Gandhi, who said, "You must be the change you seek in the world." And I studied Gandhi in school and his philosophy of nonviolence and how he led the effort for India to become a democracy. So I'm very close to the Indian American community. People can, if they want to help, you can go to my website. It's alankhazei.com. I need people to volunteer, reach out to their friends. There's a great Indian American community in this district if people are willing to contribute. This is going to be a close race, and every vote and every dollar matters.
Now, can you also talk about some of the towns which come in this district?
Sure. It's a very interesting district, Upendra. It starts with Brookline and Newton, Wellesley, Needham, Dover, which is the northern part of the district. But it goes all the way south to Fall River, to Easton, to Taunton, Attleboro, Seekonk, Swansea, Wellesley. It's a very interesting district because it's very diverse socioeconomically. I mean, where I live, we're doing, before the coronavirus, the economy is doing well. It's a lot of professionals, lawyers, academics, doctors, nurses, finance people, etc., entrepreneurs. The southern part of the district is much more like my hometown where I grew up. I was born in Catania, Pennsylvania. That's where my Italian side of my family's from. My great-grandfather was a coal miner. And in the 20th century, it was a booming town because of the coal mines, the factories, the steel mills. It's now been in a deep economic recession. That's the same thing that's happened to Fall River, to Taunton, which were industrial giants. And one of my commitments is to make sure that I can take my experience as an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, working with people from the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and the government to revitalize that area. So it's a really interesting district across the board.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned the social entrepreneurship because I think you are a perfect example of social entrepreneurship, as you are the founder and of City here. Tell us about, what you think, and especially look at the immigrant community. I think they are doing a lot of social work and community work, civil work as well. So how the social entrepreneurship is going to feature in your agenda in Washington, D.C.?
Very much. I think if I get elected, I will be the first social entrepreneur elected to Congress. I'm actually working very closely. Here's an example with another dear friend of mine from the Indian American community, Desh Deshpande, who started a great organization called Entrepreneurs for All.
Yes.
Taking his extraordinary business experience and also with Raj Melville, who's the executive director. I've worked closely with them. I helped to give them some strategic insights about how you grow it across Massachusetts and the country. Well, they are in the 4th District now. In fact, I've met with a number of their entrepreneurs. What they're doing is helping startup entrepreneurs, a lot of women, a lot of people of color, with how do you get a business idea to happen? And that should be brought across the 4th District and across the country, because it's entrepreneurs that grow the economy. And in fact, when you talk about immigrants, 40% of the companies started in America are either started by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. I mean,
40%.
40%. It's extraordinary. I mean, every immigrant themselves is an entrepreneur in my mind. I mean, like what my dad did. He left Iran after Dr. Mossadegh was overthrown. Dr. Mossadegh wanted Iran to frankly be more like India. He wanted Iran to be able to focus on, its own problems. It was a poor country. He nationalized the oil fields so the money would go to the Iranian people. He didn't want to be caught between the United States and the Soviet Union. So he was overthrown by the British government that wanted to control the oil and by RCIA. So my dad left Iran, inspired by that. And I think to myself, that was a very entrepreneurial thing to do. He came here not knowing anybody, not knowing the language. He had to retake all of his tests and get recertified as a doctor. He spent his life in service, doing a lot of free care, serving on the board of the American Cancer Society for 3 decades. So it's that immigrant spirit that drives entrepreneurship, because every single immigrant in my mind is an entrepreneur deciding they're going to come here, start over, build a life, build a family, and contribute. So
I mean, actually, talking about the immigrants you just mentioned from the Indian American community, Desh Deshpande and Raj, and also I think Venkat Srinivasan and Brian Pereira and Raj Sharma, they're also very much working with you as well.
Absolutely, it's extraordinary. I mean, the amazing leaders, which I'm honored to have supporting me. So the agenda of social entrepreneurship will be very much a part of my agenda. How do we take this entrepreneurial spirit and solve social problems, which we can do? Desh is proving it. I've proved it with City Year. There are extraordinary number of innovations around education, around healthcare, around the environment that, what needs to happen is people in Congress need to understand what's happening with these innovations. And then you can use, just like with City Year, President Clinton said, this is a great model. I'm going to create AmeriCorps and spread it all across the country. I want to do the same thing with a number of innovations that are happening that we could take advantage of as we help grow them.
So now, Alan, earlier you mentioned that you worked with 4 American presidents. Now, do you have anything in common with President Trump?
No.
Anything, nothing?
No, I'm sorry. My father came here, left a dictatorship for a country of freedom. He was Muslim. One of the first things Trump did was the Muslim ban. And I thought to myself, if my dad was a young doctor trying to come to a country of freedom, the door slammed in his face. One of the second things Trump did was completely eliminate the budget for the AmeriCorps program, which I've spent a lot of my life inspiring and growing. Now, fortunately, we have built such strong support, even with a Republican Congress, we got all the money back. I think what he's doing about sowing division and hatred is just terrible. It's not what this country's about. Trying to especially vilify immigrants, divide the country. I can't work with Trump. I've worked with every president in my career, basically since I got out of college, and closely. Republicans and Democrats, but this one, you know, he's got to go, and we can defeat him. You know, remember, he wasn't elected with majority of the vote. So
sure, yeah, that of course, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Now, before I let you go, I have one more question for you.
sure.
Is what you think is your biggest strength is?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's the values that my parents raised me with, Upendra. I mean, my mother taught me that every single person has a special gift to give, and the way you bring that out is by loving them. My father taught me that you can be anybody you want in this country as long as you work hard, you get a good education, and my parents made great sacrifices for me to get a great education and my 3 siblings. And as long as you believe in yourself and the ideals of this country, as I said, liberty, democracy, equality of opportunity, justice, and that is sort of my core. And everything I do stems from those values. You know, all the decisions I make, the work I've chosen to do, the people I meet, I think that's, you know, even though my parents have passed on now, that's their spirit really lives on in me. And every decision I think, well, what would mom do? What would dad do? So I think that's probably my greatest strength.
And
Nobody's
your last word.
Question. That's a great question. I've done a lot of interviews. Nobody's asked me that question.
Well, I mean, this question also leads to another question too. I think I should ask you that as well.
Sure.
What do you think is your weakness?
Oh, that's a good one. I think my weakness is, you know.
I know I put you on the spot here.
Yeah, you did. You know, look, I have a lot of weaknesses. I think one of my weaknesses is that I try to do too much. I'm a Gemini, so my mother always said, you're always trying to do the work of 2 people. And sometimes when I do that, I move too quickly and make mistakes, you know, because I'm trying to get so much done. I have a big agenda I want to pursue. So sometimes I'll move too quickly. My wife helps me with that. She'll say, okay, Alan, you're moving too quickly, pause.
Now, what? Since you mentioned your wife, I have to ask about her. Tell her what she does. And
well, my wife is also an extraordinary social entrepreneur. She started a group called Public Allies. That's how we met. It was another service program like City Year. In fact, she hired Michelle Obama to start Public Allies in Chicago. And Michelle, in her book, says her favorite job she's had was leading Public Allies in Chicago. So Vanessa now runs something called New Profit, which is essentially a venture philanthropy firm. So she raises money the way a venture capitalist does for businesses, but this is for nonprofits to help them scale. She's extraordinary. The impact she's having is amazing, helping groups.
And now your last word.
Yeah, I guess my last word is just thank you. I am blessed to have extraordinary leaders from the Indian American community supporting me. I would be honored to have your vote. I will take the values that I was raised with, which I know are similar to the values of the Indian American community, with me to Congress. I will fight for the things you believe in. And I'm not a politician. I'm somebody who's been a social entrepreneur, who's been a movement leader, who's been a nonprofit organization builder and a bridge builder. And I think that's what we need now in Congress. We need people who, as we turn the page on the Trump administration, people who are going to unite people, people who understand that it's not about me. It's about all of us working together. It's about finding the innovators and the entrepreneurs and the people who are rolling up their sleeves to make a difference and figuring out how the Congress can learn from them. That's what I will try to do. So I'd be honored to have the support of anyone from the Indian American community.
Excellent. Alan, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you, and all the best.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the interest.
Thank you.